I'm admittedly a crazy Big Brother fan, and you might also be a crazy Big Brother fan if you are watching this video. And as a self-proclaimed crazy Big Brother fan, there is nothing I hate more than watching a new season of Big Brother and watching these players make the exact same mistakes year after year. Have we learned nothing? Well, considering half the cast are usually recruits, they haven't even began to learn anything, so they have no idea what I'm talking about. And even some big fans of the show never notice how repetitive a lot of these mistakes become in seasons of Big Brother. So that's what I'm here to bring to the table. Talk through some of these mistakes I've noticed, talk through why in the first place they are mistakes, and then why they are made as often as they are. I have 5 different mistakes that I see play out season after season, and this is my official warning that we are probably going to see all 5 of these happen on BB27, and there's nothing we can do about it. But goddamn it, at least I tried. I don't know, in general, this feels like a video I haven't really seen before, and with the Big Brother season right around the corner, it felt like a good a time as ever to talk through some of my gripes with Big Brother players and different things that are so easily preventable and yet continuously done over and over again, leading to players losing the game in part due to these mistakes, if not even directly due to these mistakes. Right before I dive in, if you do enjoy this or any of my content, please consider liking the video and subscribing. It's a super easy thing to do and is the best way to show your support for what I do and what I make. I mean, damn, this is the first Big Brother video in a long list of Big Brother videos. It's gonna be a crazy summer for me, so strap in, and I would love if all of you guys want to join that same journey with me. So let's do it. Jump into 5 mistakes that Big Brother players keep on making. The first mistake that players always seem to make is something that happens right in the first week of the season, something that has been debated for a long time, but I think it's very clear that throwing the first HOH is a mistake. This used to be a debate all the time, where early on in the show, being the first HOH was a big mistake. And then, right past the BB15, BB16 range, it turned into a good thing for a while. People realized that those who were the first HOH have gone on to dominate the game. But in recent Big Brother seasons, there's been a bad stigma attached to the first HOH because of all the recent first HOHs flaming out spectacularly in the game. To the point where I think the debate is being brought up again. I even made a video talking about this exact same thing. If you go back to the reason why people even throw the first HOH in the first place, it's because all eyes get put on you at the very beginning. You instantly stand out amongst the crowd early on, and you have to make enemies in the game right away. With a game as long as Big Brother, instantly rising above the rest makes it so much harder to stay hidden for long stretches of the game moving forward, eventually having a target on your back that will never leave you. But I wholeheartedly believe that it's kind of naive to think like that, and winning the first HOH is absolutely worth it. The first HOH brings power, and power is the name of the game in Big Brother. The game starts the second the first HOH is won, and all of a sudden, whoever that first HOH is dictates how the game will start for everybody. And I don't know about you, but if you have control about how the season will begin, I think you should want to give yourself the best advantage possible moving forward, which you can only do if you're the first HOH. That is an inherent advantage in the game, and I don't understand why you would take that opportunity away from yourself to get that leg up on the competition. On top of just naturally increasing your opportunities to succeed in the game, the first HOH brings upon allies. There will always be a majority group that forms in the first week of the game. It happens literally every season. And you becoming the first HOH, holding power in this game, is a pretty good tool that will attract people to you, wanting you to be a part of that initial group, or even being the one to create that initial group yourself with your power. And when it comes to the early game of Big Brother, it really doesn't matter if this group is a ride or die group, but having your foot in the door is key and continues to open up your options, and that's all you want in the early game. Like, even if you're not added to the majority alliance initially, you have such a unique scope on the house as first HOH where you can see the dynamics of this game. And for one, you can recognize if you're not in the majority, and 2, you can probably connect the dots on who is in the majority working together based off of these talks and connections that you get for being the first HOH. And that goes into my next note talking about this. As the first HOH, you are able to open up plenty of one-on-one connections if you're just decent enough socially. You get the opportunity to talk to and connect with everybody in the house one-on-one, something nobody else in the house will have the opportunity to do in a natural way. You are privy to seeing who you connect to and who you personally want to pursue as an ally through these talks, as well as looking for who you don't connect with and do not trust or don't want to work with. The sheer number of opportunities that are created make gunning for that first HOH worth it, or at least just try to win it the best you possibly can. But wait, what about the last, 4 seasons where the first HOH and their game was destroyed immediately? Doesn't that mean the first HOH might not be as good as advertised in the modern day? And the answer is no. No, it does not. The key difference between all of the examples I just gave about how to take advantage of the first HOH and the last 4 Big Brother seasons is that these last 4 HOHs were all terrible Big Brother players that actively tanked their game on their own. There is a major rule that I forgot to mention earlier. In order to take advantage of these first HOH perks, you have to be somewhat of a competent Big Brother player. A good Big Brother player will elevate their position due to all of the strategies I just laid out, while a bad Big Brother player will do nothing but put a massive bullseye on their back. These bad Big Brother players go at everything all wrong. They either feel the need to make a big move early on because they were given this opportunity, and they don't want to squander that by doing something boring. But no, that is not what you should be doing with your first HOH. More often than not, you have to find a house consensus target to go after and hope luck falls by your side to have a smooth week on paper throughout. While in the background, you wheel and deal in the shadows and form these tight bonds that can last a long time way after your HOH. The actual HOH week in itself should be a secondary focus, and that is where these bad players get tripped up. They feel it's such a necessity to flip the game on its head immediately and form an alliance with the entire house, and the next thing you know, nothing's actually changed except for you sticking out like a sore thumb and becoming an easy target for somebody else to do what you should have just done originally. Winning the first HOH honestly is a win-win no matter how you look at it. If you're a good Big Brother player, you can lock yourself up for a deep run just based on this first week of the game. If you're a decent Big Brother player, you can elevate your standing in the house immediately to higher highs than you ever would have had the opportunity to otherwise, increasing your chances of making it deep and possibly opening up a window to win. And even if you're a bad Big Brother player, you really had no chance of winning anyways. So at the very least, winning the first HOH gives you the opportunity to change the narrative. And like I just said, even if it all fails and you crash and burn, you really had no chance of winning to begin with. So you might as well be given somewhat of a lifeline, and that is what the first HOH is. The second mistake that is made far too often in the early game is a social mistake that sounds super obvious when said out loud, yet people get in the Big Brother house and forget all about it. And that is hanging out too much with your closest allies, and in turn, completely ignoring or not spending any time with other house guests. This feels like common sense to me. People aren't dumb. People are generally not unaware of their surroundings. If they see you always hanging out with a select few people every single day for hours and hours on end, they're going to assume you're working closely with that person or those people. Even if you aren't working with those people, you might as well be working with them because everybody is going to assume you're close based on how much you interact. Yet, season after season, people are shocked at how the house figured out who they were close to and how their entire game was unraveled without them even noticing. Newsflash, it's because you were so naive to the fact that you think you're much smarter than these people, which is a notion shared with another one of these mistakes I will talk about a little later on. Think about the best alliances in Big Brother history. In my opinion, I think about the Cookout and the Brigade. There's one common factor that led to both of these alliances being so dominant and successful. They branched out. They rarely spent any actual time together in the house and instead found other people to stick close to and become public allies with, when the entire time the true core and true power structure in the house stuck strong together because nobody could actively piece that they were all working together because of those parachutes and distraction allies that were ultimately expendable to them. When you spend 5 hours sitting on the hammock with your ride or die ally, I promise you that alliance is not going to last because everybody sees the connection. You're basically spelling it out for the entire house and putting a massive target on your back to at least take one of those people out. It's so preventable and yet rarely avoided season after season after season. Just learn to control yourself and pay attention to who you are hanging out with because I promise you, other people are also paying attention. On the opposite end of the spectrum, for a more short-term gain, please don't ignore somebody or a group of people. This is the easiest and most common way people get themselves put up on the block. You don't need to be best friends with somebody or be their ride or die ally, but at least make an effort that doesn't come across as fake or desperate. It's going to go a long way and at least make a potential decision for that person in the future difficult, or make them hesitate before they talk shit or do whatever behind your back. You need to just at least be doing the bare minimum. More often than not, you should just be doing more than the bare minimum, but if you can't, do not give people reasons to target you or reasons to plot against you for things that are easily preventable, which both of these things easily are. The next mistake you need to respectfully avoid can happen at any point in the season, but this does mostly apply to the pre-jury, and that is that too many people agree to be a pawn for my liking. I really do not understand this at all. It sounds really dumb, and it's common knowledge that the phrase pawns go home is thrown around all the time, but it's true though, and yet year after year I see people completely ignore this fact. And I'm not even talking about the idea of going home necessarily from being a pawn, because most of the time pawns don't actually go home. However, the process of being a pawn runs so much deeper than the fact of going home. The percentage of you staying in the game if you are a pawn on the block may not be high at any given point, but it's higher than a percentage of, let's say, 0. And that's the issue. If there is a situation and I have the opportunity to take a 15% chance of going home or a 0% chance of going home, but the HOH will bitch at me for a day, I'm taking the 0% chance every single goddamn time. What are we talking about? The main reason people take this opportunity to become the pawn is because they want that chance to build trust with the HOH or their surrounding allies. This makes them useful as somebody that is willing to take one for the team. But that fact is so overblown and never works out in your favor. First of all, if an HOH or a group of people are going to you to be the pawn, you're already expendable to them. That is always what that means. I don't care what you say. Unless we are at the end game and you're trying to pull a Dan and Memphis situation. But even then, clearly the guy who was using the other guy as a pawn was looked at a lot more favorably than the guy who was a pawn himself. I mean, even in the situation where you may gain some longevity from being the pawn, tell me a single example of the quote-unquote pawn of the season winning the game, or ever really having any shot of winning the game. Taylor Hale is the only remotely close example, and I don't think that counts because of all the outside circumstances that surrounded that season. You lose a ton of long-term credibility by becoming the pawn, while also risking your short-term game at the same time. You're now looked at as the chump that agreed to become the pawn in somebody else's game with no agency. I'm sure that's going to go over well in a final vote. The HOH is never asking their number one ally to be a pawn, so where do you think you fall on the totem pole if you are being asked to be a pawn? Telling you now, it's not number one. But above everything else I just mentioned, above possibly even going home, and above ruining long-term prospects to win, the part of being a pawn that is the most underreported and yet the most damaging in my eyes is how the rest of the house views you. If you are one of those two nominees sitting on the block come eviction, the entire house has 4 days, 4 whole days to analyze all the reasons why you should stay and why you should go home. Your entire game and perception is put under the microscope in ways you never want to happen, at least not early on in the game. There's no more hiding when you're on the block, and that can change your entire game moving forward. You aren't allowed to play as freely because now you're the pawn that anybody can use for any given week. You start getting recycled over and over and over again until a majority of the house doesn't see you as a benefit anymore. And you become the fall guy before anybody else is. You're trapped in a box that you are unable to be freed from, all because you accepted going on the block that one time in week 3. It's never worth it to be a pawn, in my opinion. What's the worst that happens if you say no to being a pawn? I'm not sure, but I promise you it's a lot better than the worst case scenario if you say yes. This next one could lead you to overthinking a lot of scenarios, but I think it's generally good advice and something I'm shocked people are blindsided by every year. But you have to assume everybody in the house is playing for themselves. How the hell do people keep falling for this teamwork mentality, or if one of us can win, we all win? Now granted, some players actually do play like this, and it's embarrassing, and this never leads to a win. However, I think those are very rare compared to the amount of self-interested players, and you have to assume everybody is playing for themselves, or else you're setting yourself up to get played. If somebody is coming to you with any form of information, you have to think about why this is good for their game, because they're probably thinking that exact same thing when they tell you something. Or if you tell somebody else some information or a plan or just anything, you have to think about what they would do for their game with this new information. It would be super nice if everybody was all friendly and they always kept that information a secret for you because they just want you to do well. But that's not reality. Would there be any benefit for that person to leak what you just told them or what you're about to tell them? If so, it's probably not wise to tell them that information, because odds are that information will spread a lot more than you hoped it would. If you don't think from other people's perspectives in some of these moments, it's going to leave you very close-minded and very vulnerable for both your short-term and long-term prospects in the game. Let me be clear, this is the first and only one of these tips that I can understand why people do this, or I should say don't do this. I'm a nosy guy myself. I love a bit of gossip, and I struggle to keep information about how I'm feeling to myself sometimes. So no, I'm not saying you need to always be on edge at every waking moment when talking to somebody. That honestly does so much more harm than good and will wear you out very quickly or make you look weird and suspicious. But speaking from a general perspective, just understand everybody else here wants to win the game. Everybody here is going to do what they do with the goal of winning the game for themselves. Not for the team, not for you, for them. So understand that when maneuvering the game or attempting to make a move. This is not your story with you starring as the main character and everybody else is just a background character and an NPC. These are all self-interested people at the end of the day with the same goal as you. And even just understanding that fact, having that fact in your mind gives you a leg up on the game, as opposed to assuming the opposite and all of a sudden you fall behind very quickly. And the final note, the one that frustrates me to no end every single time, and yet we see this basically yearly. Please, for the love of God, do not backstab your number one ally for the sake of backstabbing your number one ally. Unless they say to your face they want you out, or you're at the final 3 or 4 and you don't think you can beat them, I don't think there's ever a good reason to take out your number one ally. No matter what anybody else is saying to you. So many people in any type of reality show feels the need to take out the number one ally or ride or die partner for the sake of being flashy or making that big move, when the benefits that you get from this are nothing compared to the detriment and damage that is caused. If you find yourself near the bottom of the house but pull off an improbable HOH win, and then the entire house comes up to you and tells you anything and everything to try to get you to nominate the person you feel closest to in the house, I promise you, they are not going to take you under their wing and put you in the power structure. They're actually just trying to save their own ass and want to take out who they are most threatened by on your HOH. Never give in to that paranoia. Riding into the next week with a bunch of fake allies is so much worse than walking into next week with some enemies, but an actual trusted ally by your side. It baffles me that people just feel the need to pull the trigger on their HOH. You have the power. You should take out the people that are actively threatening your game. Otherwise, your HOH becomes a stepping stool to your own demise when that's the opposite of what an HOH should do. If you truly consider yourself a ride or die with somebody, then at no point should you consider betraying them until you get to the point where you feel like you can make it to the end of the game without their assistance, and not a moment sooner. Do not be afraid to be bold when you have power. Betraying your closest friend is actually the opposite of being bold, despite what you may think in the moment. You're only caving into the mob mentality that does not have your best interest in mind. When you make this move, you're trying to keep the house happy at the expense of cutting off your own limbs in the process. If you are lucky enough to get into power at some point later in the game, make it worthwhile and do not pull off a disaster move by stabbing yourself in the process, because there is not a single winner in the show's history that has done what I'm talking about, and I don't think that's a coincidence. You hear that, BB27 players? Don't be stupid. Who am I kidding? They aren't watching this shit, so I'm sure we'll be in store for another summer of madness and pretty bad players. But as long as it's entertaining, I don't really care. I just wanted to give my views on the Big Brother game and some common trends I see repeated far too often. But that's all I got. If you have other mistakes or things you want to mention, please feel free to comment down below, and I'd love to read them. It's Big Brother season, baby. This channel is going to be infested with Big Brother content. It'll be disgusting, but aside from that, expect the occasional AU versus the world content, because I'm still hype as hell about that, and I have some big videos talking about that before this season comes. But that'll do it for me. If you made it to the end of this video, I love you. Platonically, of course. And I will undoubtedly see ya when I see ya. Bye-bye.